So hello and welcome everyone. I'm Marcus Herza, the Guggenheim Gallery Coordinator, and I'm happy to welcome today Jason DeLeon, Gabe Cantor, and Michael Wells, who work with the Undocumented Migration Project and Hostile Terrain 94, as well as artist Raul Baltazar, who you've just met, for today's reception of Hostile Terrain 94 at Chapman University. Hostile Terrain 94 is a participatory project and brings together many collaborators. To work, discuss, and reflect is at the heart of this project. Our team was thinking very carefully about going forward with it under the restrictions of the COVID-19 pandemic, as it meant the project could not be realized the way that it originally was laid out. But we did go ahead and decided to host it even though we were going to have to alter it. The reason for this is primarily that this exhibition with 94 pop-up extensions nationally and internationally is supposed to draw attention to the ongoing tragedy at the Mexican-American border before the 2020 elections. And so what was intended to bring large groups of people together to work and discuss and reflect now, like so many other activities, we had to conduct remotely. However, I'm happy we're hosting this incredible project. And I say incredible because it is both incredibly good as an impactful visualization that leaves me personally speechless. And on the other hand, it is incredible that it had to be created in the first place to shine light onto the racist and inhuman practices that were put in place in order to, quote unquote, protect the border. Our guests will talk more about the project and their experiences with it. And so I want to take only as much time as I need to briefly introduce everyone. I'm going to admit a few people in the meantime. Jason DeLeon is the head curator of Hostile Terrain 94 and executive director of the Undocumented Migration Project. He's also a professor of anthropology and Chicana studies at UCLA and author of the award-winning book, The Land of Open Graves, Living and Dying on the Migrant Trail. DeLeon is a 2017 MacArthur Foundation Fellow, and between 2013 and 17, he co-curated the traveling exhibition State of Exception. Gabe Cantor is an exhibition coordinator for Hostile Terrain 94. He holds his BA in Sociocultural Anthropology from the University of Michigan and has been involved with the Undocumented Migration Project since 2016, where he focused on photoethnographic project relating to anti-fascist movements in reaction to the 2016 presidential election. Michael Wells is the co-curator for Hostile Terrain 94 and has served as primary photographer for the Undocumented Migration Project since its inception in 2009. He has photographed the project's ethnographic and archaeological fieldwork in Arizona, New York, Mexico, and Ecuador. A Los Angeles-based photographer, he has created photography projects on post-Katrina New Orleans, the physicality of the US-Mexico border in Arizona and California, and Latino communities in the American South. Raul Baltazar was born in 1972 in Los Angeles, is an artist who works through aesthetic notions given in Mesoamerican and Western culture. His work is often driven by the struggle of Mestizo, Chicanx, POC, and Mesoamerican indigenous communities and their revolutionary vision for change in the context of Los Angeles. In addition, his work postulates responses to trauma and the body, examining the experience and rational abuse of power and authority by means of sanctioned or unsanctioned sanctioned reiterations of violence in contemporary life. So those are our speakers. Stephanie Takaragawa is also gonna talk a little bit about the project and how it was conducted over the last weeks. And I wanna just say before I pass the mic to Stephanie that we've created the exhibition physically in the gallery on campus, but unfortunately, obviously nobody can go and see it. And so we've created a Scalar page, and I will share a link to our virtual presentation, and it contains a time lapse of our install. There is student reflections on the project on there. And also on this page, we're releasing an interview with Raul Baltazar, whose work often deals with questions of migration and indigeneity. So I'm going to admit a couple more people and pass it on to Stephanie.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so glad you could all be here. We were really excited when we found out that we were able to participate as a university in Hostile Terrain 94. Last year, Jason and Mike came and spoke at the Ben Sussin lecture. Actually, that was last October, 1 year ago, when Justin Walsh brought them in to talk about their work, and they talked about this particular project. in the process of, discussing the book, The Land of Open Graves, which several of the students here have been reading in the different classes. And at the time, we thought what we would do is set this up in the gallery and have students come through and fill out the tags, and we could talk to them about the process and what this means as they read the book, and we would have some time to do it. But as it turned out, being remote required us to be very sort of resourceful in how this got done. And what we did was we mailed tags to student volunteers across the university. Actually, I should say student, staff, and faculty volunteers across the university, who then received instructions and then mailed them back. But in doing this process, I think they actually had a different kind of engagement with the work. And so in some cases, they filled out many more tags than they would have done if we had done sort of the gallery on site. I see a lot of the names of students who I've never met who were filling out tags, and many of my own students. I want to say thank you for participating in this. I really hope that you were able to derive, the significance that we were, trying to impart to you through this exhibition that they have created. And they have done such an amazing job in doing this. And Gabe has been holding our hand for the last year, explaining to us in many different ways how we would install this. Several of us went to the American Anthropological Conferences in Vancouver last year and actually participated in the install with Jason and Gabe in Vancouver, and those students are also here and helped, participate in this year. So I just wanted to emphasize how much of a collaboration this is for Chapman, and how great to have an interactive kind of project, even though we were all very far apart, and I'm hoping that this connects us to some degree. So thank you.
I just love your potato salad.
So I will just say a couple of things. I think it's going to be me, Gabe, and then Mike before Raul talking about the project. And first off, I just want to say thank you so much to Marcus and to Stephanie and to Justin and to Chapman University for supporting us, for making this happen, even though we are in very difficult times. Thank you so much for all of your support, and also. I really just want to thank all the students who have been involved in this work. I know that this is a very difficult time for all of us in a million different kinds of ways. And, I'll tell you, some days it's just hard to get up and just go about my normal day and feel like everything's going to be okay. And so the fact that all of you have taken the time to engage with something that can be very difficult to engage with and emotionally challenging, which is probably just being amplified because of the current political moment. And I just want to thank you all for that. I really, really am deeply appreciative of your time and your effort. And I speak for the whole team, and I hope that you've gotten something productive out of this experience. Because for us, it's just been really wonderful working with all of you, and just seeing all of our hosts adjust to the pandemic, and in a lot of ways. Us being kind of forced to go virtual, I think in some ways has allowed for more accessibility to these kinds of things, has allowed for more engagement broadly. People who would not have been able to travel to Chapman can now engage with us virtually, and we've been seeing this happen with all of our hosts. And so, we've been just trying to try to find as much of a positive spin on this as we possibly can. And so just thank you all for being here with us. I'm just going to say a couple of quick things before I pass it on to Gabe, to give you a little bit of background. And first off, I will say that the Undocumented Migration Project, since its inception, really has been committed to fighting racism, white supremacy, denouncing all of the evils in the world that disadvantage certain people while providing lots of advantages for others. I think at the core of our mission is to educate people in the hopes of creating empathy and understanding. And everything that we've tried to do, whether it's the research, the education, the outreach, is always about trying to increase our awareness about the experiences of other people, and and reminding us all that, you know, the language that we might use to describe others, the othering, illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants, you know, at the end of the day, we're talking about people, and our mission is to constantly remind people of that and to help them think about this in different kinds of ways. And Hostile Terrain 94, you know, really did develop out of my own attempts to try to raise awareness about migrant death in a way that didn't feel like I was just sort of preaching to an audience, or you know, we're throwing this information at you and then expecting you to kind of digest it. The logic of the project was to say, here's this troubling issue, and we're asking you to commit, you know, 5, 10, 30 minutes, an hour of your time to write out the names of the dead, to help us construct this monument to those who have died, and to bear witness for just a short period of time as a way to feel like you're engaging with it in a different kind of way. And so, you know, we Mike and I and our collaborator Lucy Cahill we curated an exhibition in the fall of 2018. Is that 19? I'm just 19. First at the Maine College of Art in Portland, Maine, and then we had a follow-up show at the the Phillips Gallery in Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And that initial exhibition was a multimedia show: migrant objects, audio, video, photography, a whole range of stuff. And one of the elements of that show was a giant wall map of the Arizona desert, showing the location of 3,200 deaths, but depicted in the form of a vinyl map. So a map of Arizona with just a bunch of red dots. And initially, I thought that graphic for me could serve a purpose of just really showing people, like, look, this is a killing field in Arizona. It continues to happen, and when you use spatial data,
Sure. I'm not gonna respond to you though, but yeah, you can talk.
when you use this spatial information in a
Because then I have to.
to convey this. All right. Thanks, Tim. Uh, when you know, we thought that if people could see these graphics, that it would be a way to kind of convey the gravity of the issue. And what we ended up finding was, after we made the map, that it really, people were kind of just lost in the red dots. And so we went back to the drawing board, and the idea was, well, what happens if we replace the red dots with toe tags, and we hand write out all the information for the dead, and then mount them in the exact location of where those people were found. And what we ended up finding was that the students who were doing this at the University of Michigan in the winter of 2019, it took them 3 months to fill out the 3,200 toe tags. And immediately when they began this process, they started saying to us, this is really challenging emotionally to sit down and do this. It's a very difficult process, and it's one that requires a lot of reflection and thinking through. And so we got the idea to say, okay, well, what if instead of us building this map, we will ask our hosts around the globe to mobilize their own communities, to fill out these toe tags, and to construct their own versions of this exhibition, as a way to feel like that they have some kind of ownership over this thing, and that they've been able to engage with it in a kind of meaningful way. And so we started that idea late 2019. We built a website. We started asking for participants to host this show. We tried to make it affordable, so under $2,000 per exhibition to cover costs, and we tried to get it so that anybody could host it. You didn't have to be a gallery. You could just be a student group. You could be a church. You could be whoever. Anyone with a wall and people power to do it could do it. And we quickly went from an idea to immediately 60, 70 hosts had signed on. Initially, we thought it would be 94 hosts, and now we're up to 130 hosts on 6 continents. So most of our shows are delayed right now. There's a few that are physically open, including Chapman, but there's a couple here in the U.S. as well as some international shows. But we're anticipating that all 130 shows will happen by the end of 2021. So I will pass it on to Gabe to talk a bit about what that's actually looked like for us, both in the lead up to this fall, as well as the way in which the pandemic has impacted our current strategies.
Thanks, Jason. Hey, everyone. My name is Gabe. And like he said, thank you all for being here. And thank you, everyone who has participated in this, students, faculty, anybody. Like he said, it means everything to us, and it's so inspiring to see so many more people, more than the 5 of us on our main team, putting in so much time and emotion into this project. So we're really grateful. And I have to especially shout out Nicole Smith and Austin Shipman, who are the 2 other members of our team who are in here. and Nicole and I have the same job. We're both exhibition coordinators, and Austin is the programs manager. So Nicole, Austin, Jason, and I had been, until the pandemic, working at UCLA in a lab full-time on this exhibition. Nicole and I were both students of Jason's. In 2019, we graduated from the University of Michigan and started working for him after we took his anthropology course our freshman year. And our job really since that first time that we did this has been to, sorry if it's a little hard to hear me. Our job since the first time we did this has been to kind of figure out the best way to make this project DIY for all of the hosts and to streamline the process. And so we had in 2019 and early 2020 about 8 prototypes of this exhibition where we were able to travel to Penn and Lancaster, and we have a show in Long Beach as well, and we got to sit down with community members and work this through and see and realize what was working the best, which was community engagement and sitting down with strangers and talking to each other and engaging in this difficult and emotional and intense experience of writing down tags. Can you hear me okay? Is that okay? Okay. I just got a message and I just need to make sure that it's all right. But anyway, Nicole and I both are exhibition coordinators, and so we've split up half of the hosts to work with. So I work with about 50 hosts, emailing, phone call, having periodic check-ins, just like I had with Marcus and Stephanie over the last year. And the goal of working with all of the hosts is to make sure that this exhibition is unique in every location, because as kind of a DIY map wall installation, the main point is kind of to mobilize these communities to then engage with themselves and come up with supplemental programming, additional events, art pieces, whatever it may be for their unique school or church group or organization to have this conversation. And pre-pandemic, it was all about sitting down intimately with strangers and talking about it and talking this through and empathizing. It's a big exercise in empathy. And so, like Jason said, though, even though you can't now sit down, we're all still here in these squares, and it's been kind of amazing to see the outreach that Zoom can get. And you know, we have a host. I was just saying 10 minutes ago to Stephanie and Marcus that we have a host in Topeka, Kansas, who is doing the installation right now. And in March, right when the pandemic started, he left tags on his porch for his community members to pick up, and they filled them out at home. They brought them back, and he left them there to disinfect for 24 hours. And in a matter of 2 months, all of the tags were filled out. They spent a week in July putting them up. And now the installation is up at their university, and they're having these virtual events online that can be attended by people in Africa and Asia and Europe. He messaged me last week, and it is really, really incredible to see. And we have other kinds of ways that we're engaging, and we have a digital project where you guys can participate, and we can talk about this closer to the end in this new video compilation that we have, where if you didn't get a chance to fill out tags for this installation at Chapman, you can record yourself reading the name of someone who's lost their life in the Arizona desert. And we are compiling it into what will eventually be a 12+ hour video of every name being read out by a stranger around the world. And we, excuse me. And, you know, especially with the prototypes and getting to work with so many places, working on installation has been a big part. And as it's really amazing to see in this virtual setting. This is our first virtual reception with a host, and it differs in every way. And each show, even the map looks differently. And so I know you've seen the tags, there's the orange and the manila tags, and you place them in their exact location. But every time we've done this show, we've had these, like, when you finish the installation after a week, the wall has a personality. It has an emotional gravity in the room. And I know we're just seeing it virtually, but it's still so moving to me, and the different amounts of work and people power that's gone into it. I also that week in Vancouver that Stephanie you were talking about, I was actually in New York installing an exhibition, and it was just me and Mike. And Mike can probably talk a little bit about that too, and about the immense emotional weight of working on this exhibition over time. And so I can pass it on to you before I keep rambling and rambling. But I'm just really grateful to you guys, and to see this exhibition come to fruition at Chapman in a different way than we expected, but still in a really exciting and moving way. So Mike, I'll let you take it away. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Wells. I'm co-curator and photographer on the project. I've worked on the project since I guess the beginning with Jason. I have a art and design background, and when Jason started starting to figure out what he was going to be doing in the desert, or thinking about what he was going to do out there, I tagged along and started taking pictures. I've known Jason for a long time. We're close friends. So I started taking pictures along the way, and the project, the undocumented migration project, started to form and eventually turned into, had different elements. The first kind of notable one, I guess, was the book, but then after that there was opportunities for exhibition. And so we started to talk about different ways to represent the project and all the different elements of it. And so one of the ways Jason talked, these guys talked about most of the project, so I'm going to try and just fill in a little bit and tell you a little bit of my background. But I guess being good friends with Jason, and I would talk to him often about the project kind of casually, but I don't work in his lab. I'm not an academic. I'm a professional photographer, so that's my line of work and my thinking, I guess. But we would casually talk about the project and how we could maybe show one element would help to display, give one sense of an idea that you would come across. So for example, the map, which Jason talked about, to put all the dots on the wall, which then turn into the HG94 pop-up. We have some other elements that are photography, my photography, but then there's elements of photography that are done by migrants, as well as cell phone video that's done by migrants. There's objects, so there's all sorts of different elements that kind of just ideas. So we started to put all the pieces together, but as Jason said, the wall, the HG94 wall, was, when it was just dots, it was kind of just dots, and people would come up and say, I don't really know what that is. But once it became the tags and there was more information on it, it was impactful for people to see it. And it's not that we were used to seeing it, but I felt like that we kind of knew, since we designed it, what those pieces were. Like, yeah, that dot represented a person, but once people could actually get it and take it in, it became of this really powerful moment. And then once people then were involved in it and filled out the tags themselves, I think that that really had the kind of pushing it over the edge as being something that was effectively talking about the getting the message across, I guess, that we were trying to do. I'm not, we always talk about art in this, and the project involves art. I'm not really sure it's an art project, and I'm still, some people think it is, some people don't. I'm not sure it is, but it's relaying the information in such a way that it's emotionally impactful to the viewers, and hopefully causing change, which is what we're hopeful for. So, yeah. I'll leave it there.
Marcus, do you want to toss it over to Raul?
Yeah, Raul, maybe you can. So Raul is an artist, an LA-based artist, and he is not directly involved with HT94, but there's an interview on the scalar that I've just shared that I've conducted with Raul, and many of his works deal with migration, indigenous culture, and Mesoamerican religious questions. So Raul, if you could maybe summarize your work in a nutshell. I know we don't have a lot of time and it's difficult for people who are not familiar with your work. I want to just ask everybody to check out the scalar that we made. There's a lot of his videos on there and the interview, and I hope you're going to enjoy that. But Raul, one of the works that I've seen of yours was a performance that dealt directly with the question that HT94 is asking, which is migrant deaths in the Arizona desert. Maybe you could talk. Maybe you could start there. Talk a little bit about how this project came to pass, when that happened, and just give us a couple of cornerstones to understand your work.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for being able to be a part of this. Today, my computer died, and so I have to be on my phone, but luckily, I was able to come here to OLA, where I work with youth here in MacArthur Park area. So if you notice in the background, you know, this is some of the artwork that we produce with the youth. We're definitely very politically engaged, and we work with a lot of immigrant youth from Central, South America, Korea, and Mexico. Especially a lot of Zapotecs, a lot of people from Oaxaca area. And so, you know, it's pretty cool that sometimes you just have to roll with it. And of course, it brought me to this wonderful place that I'm very proud of being a part of. This performance specifically, I was invited as a Chicano artist to Culiacan to do a performance about crossing the border. I was the only artist who represented the Chicano, and there was an artist from every state in Mexico. And basically what I had to do was I was attempting to cross the border. This was after SB 1017. And which was an very racist anti-immigration law that had been passed. And basically, as I was performing, I lunged, and because I was on a salt flat, I didn't realize how the impact would be on the floor. And so I dislocated my arm, and I figured then that I would have to keep performing for the next 4 days because that was a 4-day performance. And it really made me think about the fact that when people are crossing the border, they don't have that choice to be taken to the clinic, to be, or to have any type of medical attention. And so in that way, I realized that, my body was the offering, for this performance. And that it was a very real thing that people are put in this vulnerable situation just to try to create wealth for their family. And the only thing they have to offer is their body. So in this piece, I later performed actually by the way, I was dressed up as the bunny, a Tochli 7, the Aztec bunny, which is kind of a nahual that I work with as a trickster character, as like a Hayoka clown kind of a character within ritual performance. And so as the bunny died, the next day we had carrot cake and carrot juice to commemorate their lives. And people wrote down the names of anyone who had crossed the border. And of course, everyone there had known someone who had crossed the border. and they wrote down the names. There's a video of this, by the way, that you could reference, which Marcus is host, and we talk a lot about the performances. But that's just one example of the type of performance art that we do related around the border. I firmly believe that just like the butterfly, the salmon, and we should be able to cross the borders and to be alive and wild, like the way nature is. And I just, this is part of the consciousness that I think we need to really embrace to move ahead, in this world. I guess I'll leave it at that because unless you have other questions, Marcus,
No, thank you, Rob. That was great. As I said, we have a video with an interview up on the Scalar page, also links to videos, and also a link to a TV documentary about that performance that Raul was just mentioning. So please go ahead, check it out. I think we can open it up to a Q&A. We have almost 100 people, or we have 100 people here. So feel free to ask any of our guests questions about their involvement with HT94 or Raul about his practice. Anyone?
Marcus, maybe while people are thinking about questions you want to ask, I don't know if you want to bring up the Scalar page and share it.
Yep.
Maybe walk people through that and the exhibition to the extent possible.
I'll actually show the time lapse that we recorded of the install. This is our Scalar page. Instead of the show in the gallery, you will see this. You can enter it. A little bit of information about hostile terrain, the background, and then how the installation works. This is us working in the gallery last week, putting up the show. And this is what it looks like at the moment in the gallery. It's fairly large. It's the longest wall on the north side of the gallery, pretty much centered. And so here's a little time lapse that we created that I can share with you.
How long a period does this cover?
This was, I would say, four days of install and about 5 hours each time. And we've compressed it to, as you can see, 4 minutes, 19 seconds. And my browser isn't loading. Let's see. Oh, it's not moving. And so this is the procedure at every stop of the show, every participating, every participating entity, be it a school or another facility, will put it up in this way. And as you will notice, this is going pretty fast, but once we start putting up the tags, you will see how slowly we're actually putting them up, because it's, I think the number is 3,200 roundabout toe tags. The manila colored ones that we're putting up are, you'll see there's 2 different colors. The manila ones are identified bodies, and the brighter orange ones are the ones that are unidentified.
I would be interested to hear if anybody wants to talk about what their experience of writing the toe tags was.
I found it heavy, not to take away from anybody else who wants to speak to this. Because there's, yeah.
Who did this. And I've heard from a lot of them, so I wondered if some of you wanted to share some of your thoughts. Oh, I see it in the comments. Somebody just posted. So Rennie, you said you felt like the unknown tags were emotionally heavier to do? Marissa, is your hand up?
Yeah, I was gonna just mention that I'd written a reflection for this, so what I'm gonna say is really similar to my reflection, but I remember I started writing them at the end of like a really long school day. I was working like for a long time. And then so I just picked it up and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start. And I just started reading through them, and like after I just read through a page, I just had to like stop everything and just take a minute to really realize what I was doing. It was incredibly emotional because I was thinking about my family members that were crossing and how, you know, this very well could have been any of my family members that were crossing. And it's really hard for me to fathom the process just because I've been separated from it through like generations or like a generation, but I felt more connected to family members through this experience than any other type of experience I've had before. So it's a very emotional process. I don't want to get emotional, but it was very powerful. Yeah.
There's a a question about the digital translation and expansion, and other country versions, which I'm happy to talk about. And I just want to thank you, Marisa, for sharing that. I mean, I know that everybody comes to this project from a different place, from their own kind of place, and you know, as we've done the different prototypes and the versions that are kind of rolling out right now, you know, they've been done in a really diverse set of places. So the first prototype we did was the University of Michigan, and it was mostly, you know, 450 of my Anth 101 students who were doing it for extra credit, who I think a lot of them, you know, were coming, you know, Michigan is close to the Canadian border, but that's a very different sort of beast compared to the U.S.-Mexico border. And so a lot of folks were coming to it for the very first time and were, you know, sort of shocked. Were learning about stuff, you know, for the very kind of first time. And I think when we did the show in Orange County for the first time, you know, a very different set of people who were much closer and more connected to this issue. And so we have really tried to work hard to help people navigate those kinds of different experiences and to be able to have time to reflect. And also, I think it's been really important, and we saw this happening at the first prototype in Michigan, where, you know, we did have students who were, you know, a small majority who are connected to this issue in a very personal kind of way. And for many of them, you know, they ended up serving as kind of translators for this process for many others who just weren't, who were coming to it for, you know, for the first time. And so it's been really interesting. I know, and I'm sure Gabe could talk more about this because he's been more on the ground with with working with participants at different shows. And I'll let him do that after I just answer this other quick question about, you know, the digital translations, right? Where people are doing all kinds of amazing, innovative virtual kinds of activities right now, film screenings with Q&As. The people have been doing the virtual toe tag, filling out sessions. Texas State had some musical performances last week associated with their show there, and so that's been really great. And, internationally, our hosts in Amsterdam, that show is up, and they just seem to have a much better handle on the pandemic, obviously, than what's going on here. So they've been able to have guests in the gallery, and people are able to see it in person. But all of our international hosts, I mean, a lot of them came to us through our call for hosts, but others we really sought out. And so we have lots of representation in Latin America. We have multiple shows in Mexico, Central America, and South America, hosts that we were seeking out, and we were trying to encourage to host the show, and we've been trying to raise money through our nonprofit to help fund those shows for places that can't afford to do it. But like our European shows, our first slated European show was intended to be on the island of Lampedusa, which we've had to postpone. But the Lampedusa show was an intentional nod to the Mediterranean crisis right now. And so that show will happen next summer, we hope. We've got a show happening in Athens as well. These are places that are dealing with their own migration crises. And we see those hosts as partners who are able to sort of stand in solidarity with what's happening along the U.S.-Mexico border, and to help the world see that we are living in we're not just living in a global pandemic moment, we're living in a global migration crisis moment right now that's not going to go away anytime soon. And things like global warming are making parts of the globe uninhabitable. And so we're going to continue to deal with this issue in Mexico, in the U.S., in parts of Europe and elsewhere. And so those hosting partners have been really important for us to help us show that this is not just about the U.S.-Mexico border, that this is part of a much greater problem that we need to address as a species. And we cannot be isolated by national boundaries, because this crisis does not recognize those boundaries, and humans have never recognized international boundaries and borders. The livelihood of our species has been our ability to migrate and in search of a better existence. And so I think this project is partly trying to show that we cannot deal with this issue on a country by country basis. It has to be something like climate change. We have to deal with it as a collective. And so that's been really, really wonderful for us to have those hosting partners around the globe.
And I'll just say off of that, in terms of how it's been changing, this format is so exciting to me that Stephanie, through snail mail, you put tags with information in an envelope and sent it to people to hand write. And that, I think, is the perfect hybrid situation. We've had this host at St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. Their team of 8, mostly undergrads and a few faculty members, at the beginning of the pandemic got together and workshopped for weeks a way to fully digitize the tag filling process. And so starting in June, they had Zoom events. They had anyone from any school, institution, just the public through Zoom come together, and they would facilitate these kinds of tag filling sessions and share a Google Doc with a digital tag and assign a certain amount of tags to fill out corresponding to specific individuals for each participant. And so you're given 20 minutes to fill out 2 tags. And although, and we all know it, that typing does not have the same kind of visceral response as writing may have to putting pen to paper and writing down someone's name and death details and, interacting with that, the typing still forced people to engage with it. And then because they had some extra time on their hands, because it was 20 minutes dedicated to 2 tags, we've seen a lot of people filling out tags, taking that time to Google the coordinates where that person's remains were found on Google Earth and seeing that location in the desert. Someone, started just Googling poems about death to find the appropriate kind of mood that was being elicited. And they, we tell folks in person when they fill out the tags, you're welcome to write on the back a message to that person or so on. But on the computer, they have digital backs of the tags. And so this person found a poem and they put it on the back of the tag. And so it's like fully digital, and that host has then trained other Hostile Terrain 94 hosts to do those same kind of webinar sessions. And so it's really transforming in different ways. And in the end, they'll print out those tags and put them on their installation. And although they'll superficially look the same, they might be a different kind of paper, they would look slightly different from the tags that eventually get filled out in person when they go through with their installation next year. And at first that was a concern, but we talked about it, and the truth is, I think it's important to see that hundreds of tags were filled out by people on the computer in the middle of a global pandemic. And that this is a conversation to be had at any moment by anyone around the world. And with that, I saw, Jason, you just posted in the chat, you all can see a link to our video compilation. It has instructions for any of you who would like to volunteer, and we will send you information for one person to read their name and join it and be a part of that video. And I was talking with Nicole last week. She was showing me, she's kind of building a map. You can see there's over 516 locations around the world where people are submitting videos. And so we were just saying, I think we've had 1,700 people sign up, and we still need about 1,500 more. So yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Gabe. There's an interesting question that I want to read. Would you mind speaking about the intersect? Oh no, hold on. Where was it? Question about.
Was it the one? Are all the
for you.
all the sites and our colleges and adult spaces? How do you bring children into this conversation without bringing them trauma?
That's a conversation we've had in different ways, because even some high schools were hoping to get involved and trying to frame how to engage with children. Jason, you might be better to speak about that and maybe some of the materials and supplemental stuff we were thinking about.
Yeah, we have had hosts who are developing curriculum for children, and so much of this revolves around just understanding issues about migration, why people leave one place to go to another. We are anticipating, and we've compiled like a bibliography of appropriate books for kids to read to learn about this stuff. We've put together a soundtrack. We're working on a coloring book that kids can engage with, but we're also, involved in various projects. We were slated to be in Chiapas, Mexico this summer, doing photo and storytelling camps with kids who come from a community in southern Chiapas that has a very high out-migration rate. And so similar to what Raul said, when you go to Mexico, there's practically no one that doesn't know someone who has migrated. And what we've been wanting to do is to run storytelling workshops with kids about their own family histories, about what they understand about people who have left their community. So we work with each host to figure out kind of what is appropriate. And some hosts are really interested in bringing in kids of different ages, where others have tended to make it kind of more about an adult space. But we basically have those conversations kind of with each host individually, so we can help them kind of develop whatever they need for their specific location.
There's another question. I have a quick question. Would you mind speaking about the intersection between anthropology and art, especially with projects that carry so much weight, such as HT94? What was your process of creating an engaging experience while maintaining the responsibility of honoring those who lost their lives? I think this is a question for all four of our guests, I think.
Well, why don't we let Raul maybe take this first?
Raul? Raul?
Yes. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. Did you hear the question?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Would you mind speaking about the intersection between anthropology and art, especially with projects that carry so much weight, such as HT94? this is for you. What was your process of creating an engaging experience while maintaining the responsibility of honoring those who lost their lives with regard to your performance work?
Okay. I just want to piggyback really quick off of what you said, and then I'll get to that. I work with a lot of youth here in MacArthur Park area and beginning to engage them about the subject of death. And one thing that I always find myself coming back to is the fact that these people are all heroes and sheroes, and that they have taken the call of duty to embark on that hero's journey. And so I just always talk to my students about that and the fact that they should be proud of telling their stories, because a lot of their parents have migrated. And I've had some students create amazing paintings, revolving around that. So that's one thing, just to say that often we're told to be ashamed of that and given all of these labels and to be made to feel like we're villains, or these people are villains when they're actually the champions. And if my parents, for example, would have never migrated, I wouldn't be the person I am today. In regards to the other questions, of course, I'm not an anthropologist, so I'm not going to pretend to be that. So maybe someone else can answer that question. But I just think that when you approach these types of subject matter, that it's important to be humble and to listen. And I have a different tactic than many other artists have. So for example, my work could be very ironic, or almost, look at, I must approach you in a way that's kind of not as harmful, because it could be kind of seen as funny or lighthearted, but then the work begins to tangle you up like a boa constrictor, where you're all of a sudden confronted with this injustice or this now having to have a type of empathy that hopefully you had because of the situation that I'm creating, so that's my personal approach to the work. I thank you all for your project. It's so intense to just sometimes they're just numbers, when they throw out, it could be 10,000 or 40,000, and what does that mean? But, when you do start really participating in things like this, in the artworks, that hopefully, once again, bring a sense of empathy. I think it's a powerful medium, and we need more of it.
Thank you, Raul.
Yes.
Jason?
Yes, thank you, Raul. I hope that we can meet someday.
Most definitely, yes.
That's actually been one of the cool things about these virtual events, is that I feel like we're getting to meet a lot of really amazing artists, at least digitally, and locals. So I'm hoping that once this is all over, we can get everybody together for some in-person interaction. And I'll just kind of say about the relationship between anthropology and art. I don't sort of think about that distinction about, as Mike said, like, is it art? Is it not art? We'll call it art if that's what it takes to get it into an art space to engage with that audience, and we'll call it something else if that's what it takes to put it in some other kind of space. I tend to think about the stuff that we do now as we are trying very hard to translate what would normally be dry social science information that is inaccessible to most people into different formats. And sometimes, calling it art, putting it into a different medium. For me, it's just really about allowing us to engage with new audiences, and also about accessibility. I think we carry with us at all times a sensitivity and a deep commitment to the people that we are very privileged to be representing in these spaces. And so that's always our first. I mean, and that's why Mike and I have been having this conversation for over a decade about ethics, about representation, but whether or not we're doing the right thing by putting something into a different format or translating it into some other kind of version. Our entire team, that is the conversation that we have weekly. Is it, do we feel good about this? Are we going to feel good about this in 5 years? Are we going to feel good about this in 50 years? What are the potential, pitfalls of taking anthropological data and putting them into these new formats? And one of the wonderful things I think about this collaboration with all of our hosting partners is that, and I think the Undocumented Migration Project has always had this approach, is that I want to facilitate collaboration and to be very open about feedback, about criticism, because I want the work to be able to grow organically, and for people who participate in it to feel like they are important stakeholders in this whole process, whether that's migrants that we work with or our hosting partners. We're constantly taking feedback and having conversations about how do people feel about this stuff? Is it working? Is it not working? And as a development team, for creating Hostile Terrain 94, we took a lot of feedback from all of our hosts, which is why we did 8 prototypes. We wanted to go to different places, see how the things were going to work out, see how people were going to respond, and then we'd go back to the drawing board and say, okay, this worked, this didn't work. And so we take a lot of cues from people, both who are our partners as well as our audiences, so that we can get better and be more informed and be more sensitive to the stuff, because it's really we don't have it figured out. I've never had this figured out. I always say that the moment that I feel confident that I'm an expertise in someone else's experiences, or an expert in someone else's suffering, that's when I know that I should no longer be doing this work. And I think that everyone on this project comes to this with that kind of thinking, because it could be very easy to do this stuff and ignore people. I mean, especially undocumented people who oftentimes don't have the ability to speak back to the artist, to the art space, to the anthropologist. I mean, they don't oftentimes have the power to critique us and to be heard. And so we walk into it going, how do we help those people be heard and feel like they are a part of this whole thing? And just to conclude, we're getting ready to launch our the augmented reality component of this exhibition. So you'll be able to scan it with your cell phone or go online and engage with this wall virtually, and that's the space where you'll be able to actually hear the voices of migrants, people telling their stories, talking about their lost loved ones or their own experiences in the desert. And for us, that's always been a crucial, like, how do we forefront those voices? And with this exhibition, that's once that launches, we'll share that with all of you, and you'll be able to engage with it we hope in a different kind of way.
Yeah, I would just say on that, when I first started working with Jason, it was more of an archaeological project, and I thought, oh, cool, it's science, right? We're just like collecting this data, and it's just data. And quickly, I learned that it's not data, and as it turned into be more of an anthropological project, the questions were initially ethically about collecting data, collecting information, and there's certain releases to take pictures of certain things or not people. And that was the major concern at the beginning, was thinking about these artifacts and where they were, and then how to talk about that and think about that. And then we started moving into the book space, and then you're thinking about how are you representing the people in the project, in the book. Like, how are you showing them? Did you capture them? Can you show them? They have pseudonyms, all that kind of thing. Then when it goes to the exhibition space, there's who's telling the story? Are we telling the story, or are the people themselves telling the story? So you're thinking about bringing in, not just using our information, but taking stories that were provided by migrants, that was created by migrants and people that were, alive, not just the dead, right? So then you have and then it's like, well, we're talking about the smugglers also, which is another part of the project. So it's not just the migrants, but then the smugglers are telling their story. What's their story? And then now also again in the exhibition space, you're thinking about how you're representing this to the viewer and what's their reaction and the trigger warnings that are necessary and the text that's necessary to prepare people so when they view it, they're prepared to see this and they're not, you're not just blasting them with unnecessary trauma, with someone else's trauma, and how that can all be seen. So there's just so many sides to it. Like Jason said, I mean, I don't think we have it, we're working to be better every day because we want to tell the story and we want to be part of the telling of the story, but it's really, there's a lot of sides and they don't always line up, but we're working towards that anyway.
I think we might be about out of time. Yes, Marcus?
Yeah, we are pretty much out of time. I was just gonna see if Gabe wanted to maybe jump on that last question.
I think we got it all. I think they got it all.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, in this case, I want to just thank all of our guests, Jason, Michael, Gabe, and Raul for being here with us today and sharing your thoughts and your time with us. And also want to thank all of you who were watching. And please go and check out the Scalar page. I've posted the link a couple of times in this chat. I'm going to do it again one more time. And then I'll hope to see you all safely back on campus very soon. And I was also going to ask, as people are leaving us, maybe our guests could stay on for a little bit after the call. So with this said, bye everyone, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
And see you next time.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Marcus.
Bye-bye.